coming up on the right side of us, we have back in town from Storyville. Now this is where prostitution was tolerated from the end of the 1800s to 1917. Mayor Sidney Story wanted prostitution out of the French Quarter. French Quarter goes from one block to the left from Rampart Street to the Mississippi River, Canal Street to Esplanade Avenue. Now from 1718 to 1762, we were a French territory. From 1762 to 1803, we were a Spanish territory. In 1803, for 3 weeks, we became a French territory again. Then eventually, 1803, Louisiana Purchase, we became an American territory. But from 1718 to 1803, under the French, his son is one of our tour guides. He's working today. If you have Mr. Bill later today, if you get off the bus and walk around, get Mr. Bill back. His mother, Mr. Bill's mother, was the model for that sculpture. Now this area here is also the birthplace of Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong's mother worked in these brothels. At the age of 11, Louis Armstrong gets arrested for shooting off a gun on New Year's. He goes to reform school. In reform school for 3 years, he gets his only musical training there. Coming up on the left side of the bus, coming up to the Caesars Superdome. Now the Superdome was opened up in 1975. It was opened up 51 years ago. The Superdome was built to host the New Saints. Now they can fit 75,000 people in the Superdome for a football game. They can also fit to use for professionals. Now the roof is the largest system in the world. Now as it sits on top of that building, it's 5.9 acres big. There's nothing holding it up other than it's a to the building. We now have 17 evacuation stations throughout the city. So if they do call for mandatory evacuation, you can go to one of these evacuation pickup points. A bus will pick you up, bring you to a shelter, then bring you back home and safe to come home. Also on the right, on the terrace level, there's a Vietnam War memorial up there. You have 4 soldiers, 3 soldiers carrying their wounded soldiers safely. Now this street we're coming up to now is South Street. The South Street is named after the French-Canadian explorer Sal, who in 1683 came down along the Mississippi River, gets a little bit past what is now the city of New Orleans, declares the Mississippi River and all the waters that run into it to the King of France, naming his territory Louisiana after King Louis XIV. Now LaSalle had no idea how much land he was buying. The Mississippi Valley goes from the Gulf up to the Canadian border. And that's how they stop the Mississippi River from flooding the city of New Orleans every spring. Now you figure, plenty high enough to stop the city from flooding. But 5 years after they built the levee, the river came over the top of that levee. So 20 miles upward from the city of New Orleans, they built what we call the Bonnie Parish Spillway. The Bonnie Parish Spillway is a 3-mile wide diversionary track. There's 120 bays in that diversionary track. 17 feet above sea level, they will open up that Bonnie Parish Spillway. Now we're going to make a turn onto Tropicana Tulip. If we were to go straight, we'd head into the Port of New Orleans. Also straight ahead on our left, see that little slope up with that grass? That is the top of that levee. That is 21 feet above sea level. The Port of New Orleans is the 10th largest port tonnage-wise. Now right here, the Mississippi River is 175 feet deep. You get to Baton Rouge, it's only 50 feet deep. These big seafaring ships cannot get up past Baton Rouge. That's why we have a city below sea level. Side of the bus was originally a town of Annunciation. On the left side of the bus was originally a town of Lafayette. All these American towns are called upward from the Canal Street. Now coming up on the right side of the bus, they have 2 double shotguns. See the White House, see a door, a window, door, next building, window, door. Those are 2 double shotgun houses. And it was designed for that. Very little privacy for you when you're speaking to your conversation, you're right on top of each other. Now also look to the right, look above the houses. You see the church, across the street from each other. There's an Irish church, right across the street is a German church. Next stop is 11. Does anybody want to get off the bus to stop 11? Mr. Corona, nobody going down for stop 11. So this area right here is above sea level. here on Magazine Street. We're entering into what was originally the town of Lafayette. On the right side of the bus is the Garden District. Now the Garden District was developed by a real estate developer in the 1930s. The Garden District was developed as a neighborhood for the very wealthy. Big Victorian mansions, big pieces of property. It was meant for the shipbuilders, ship captains, the importers, the exporters. It's still home to the very wealthy. Sandra Milligan lives in the Garden District. Goodman. You go inward block, the houses get very small, very close to each other. The men work on the docks on the Mississippi River, and the women would domestic service in the Garden District. Next stop coming up is stop 12. Now stop 12 is the stop for the walking tour for the Garden District. If you have a 2 or 3 day ticket, included in that ticket is a walking tour of the Garden District. If you have a 1 day ticket, you can upgrade from a 1 day to 2. It's $5 to get that upgrade. Does anybody want to go off and stop 12 for the walking tour? It's Commander's Palace, one of the top 10 restaurants. It's won more James Beard Awards than any other restaurant in the United States. Emerald Lagasse used to be the chef there, Paul Padone, Jenny Shannon.
Is that that blue building?
Yeah.
It's the blue building, right?
Yeah.
You said, what's the name of it?
Commander's Palace. They also have a little coffee shop right in front of Creperie. Part of the Brennan family, they have 12 restaurants in the city of New Orleans, all excellent food. Bourbon House, Redfish Grill, Tableau, Napoleon House, Brennan's on Royal. This is called Bromart. E-A-U-X, pronounced O. This is French Louisiana. This is called G-E-A-U-X. Now, I moved to Louisiana. These are really good hot dogs. But you guys are all on vacation. Don't eat hot dogs on your vacation. Eat gumbo, jambalaya, egg buffet, shrimp creole. Too much really good Cajun and Creole food in the city of New Orleans for the hot dogs. Now, if you're driving down Louisiana Avenue, look at this beautiful canopy of live oak trees. Now, these live oak trees are native to Louisiana. These trees will get to be 1,000 years old. These trees here are about 150 years old. Look at the branches on these trees. You see that dead leaf? That's a fern. It's called resurrection fern. The roots of that fern are in the bark of the tree. And when it rains, they get moisture, they spring back to life with the beautiful, bright, vibrant green leaf. That moisture evaporates, they shrivel like they are now. Next rainfall, they come back to life. Also coming up on the right side of the bus, we got some Spanish moss. Burns White House, Spanish moss is called a pineapple family air plant. People used to use Spanish moss in the slave houses. This is called the Fresh Market. But look at this building. Have you ever seen a grocery store that looks like that before in your life? Well, before it was a grocery store for 130 years, that was a funeral parlor. Now, when they converted it from a funeral parlor to a grocery store, they promised they put in the refrigerators and freezers in there. They're not using the same refrigeration system. Now, the streetcar. We got one coming out. It costs $1.40 on a streetcar. Make sure you have exact change. They do not give change to get on a streetcar. Now, all the streetcars are made by hand here in the city of New Orleans. Now, you get on the Green streetcar, first stop on Canal Street, get to the end of the line on Carrollton Avenue, they ask you to get out, they flip the seats over and charge you $1.25 to get back home. Now, if you're going to do more than one ride, when you get on the streetcar, ask for Jazzy Pass or Monday Pass for $3. That will get you on and off any public transportation for 24 hours. Streetcars, buses, or ferries. Now the red streetcars, they are much newer. The red streetcars go down Canal Street. They have air conditioning and heating. The green ones do not. There are 3 lines for the red streetcars. One line goes out to City Park in Mid-City. Another line runs along the Mississippi River from Blaine Kern's Mardi Gras Road to the French Market. And another one runs to the Broadway neighborhood. Now coming up on the right side of the bus, this beige bench with the 4 big columns. For 2 years, this is where they filmed Real World MTV in New Orleans. This beige house right here. Also coming up on the right, this White House with the 6 white columns. This is the job of Dan Rice. The who wrote the Vampire Chronicles. They made the movie with Tom Cruise in it, Brad Pitt. She's up in that house right there. There are still 3 green streetcars going back to the 1800s. There are moving historical landmarks. Next stop coming up will be stop number 15. Stop number 15 is our last stop on St. Charles Avenue for the Guard District on our right to Central City on our left.
Wow.
Now right in front of anybody for 15? No one coming down for 15. Right in front of stop number 15 is part of the Eiffel Tower. Somebody water porter over here opened up as a restaurant here. Now it's a vessel. So look to the right. Technically, you can have your wedding reception in the Eiffel Tower, and nobody would have to get a passport. That's it. That's part of the Eiffel Tower. Then we're coming down, Mr. Karan. Those beads are from past years Mardi Gras. Now Mardi Gras starts every year on the same day. January 6th is the Epiphany, that's King's Night. That is the beginning of the Mardi Gras season. Now Mardi Gras ends on Fat Tuesday. Fat Tuesday is the day before Ash Wednesday. Fat Tuesday could be anywhere from the end of January to the beginning of March. Last year it was March 4th, this year is February 17th. Now Mardi Gras is like a two-faced festival, 2 sides of the same coin. In the French Quarter, it's a very adult-themed festival. The people in the French Quarter have a hard time standing up, have a hard time keeping their pose. St. Charles Avenue, we're going there now, it's a very family-friendly festival. All the parades, or 95% of the parades go down St. Charles Avenue. There are 2.5 weeks worth of parades. There are 45 parades in that 2.5 week period. Anywhere between 18 to 35 floats per parade. Between each float is a marching band or a dance troupe. Now St. Charles Avenue is lined with ladders. On top of the ladders, they built benches so little children see the floats going by. The neutral ground to the left where the streetcar is, full of people picnicking and barbecuing. The first weekend, people camp out, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get their spots. The second weekend, people actually camp out overnight. Now, 16 years ago, my wife moved to New Orleans. I'm like, baby, we gotta get ready for Mardi Gras. My wife's like, I don't wanna go. I'm like, what do you mean you don't wanna go? You just moved to New Orleans. She goes, no, I seen all that chaos, all that debauchery on TV. I was no part of it. I said, sweetheart, what you see on TV is in the French Quarter. It's very different uptown. We go back and forth. I convinced my wife to come for 15 minutes. You're walking out of the house to go to the parade. My wife goes, Steve, I'm not leaving unless you agree. You get to St. Charles Avenue, I'm going to set my alarm for 16 minutes. When the alarm goes off, we leave. I said, I'm fine with that. We ended up going to 6 days with the parades that first year. She liked it so much. Now, we spent this year's Mardi Gras with a friend's family. They've been living here for generations. There are 48 members of this family, ranging from an 8-month-old baby to a 92-year-old great-grandfather. That family goes to that same spot for over 100 years. That 92-year-old grandfather, every Fat Tuesday, goes to First and Washington Avenue. They don't have to say where we're going to meet, what time we're going to meet. They just know. The Broussard family, Fat Tuesday, First and Washington. We are on a big bend on the Mississippi River. If you go to St. Louis Cathedral, from that one spot before they built that levee, you could look east, down River Mile. You could look west, up River Mile. You could be driving down the street in New Orleans, you're heading east, you're heading west, and then you're heading south on the same street. You never get off street, you're following that crescent. When I first moved to New Orleans, 40-something years ago, drive down the street, and all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, I'm going in the wrong direction. I had to look at a map, I see I'm following that crescent. Now look above us. See this bridge? It's called the Crescent City Connection Bridge. The cars on the right side of the bridge, the one above us, these cars are driving due east over the Mississippi River to the West Bank. Those cars are driving east to the West Bank. On the other side of the river, other side of the French Quarter, outside the French Quarter by the French Market, then you're heading west to the West Bank. We're going east to the West Bank. So we don't give directions the way most cities do. We don't use north, south, east, west. Our directions, straight ahead, Riverside, behind the bus, Lakeside, Lake Pontchartrain, to the right is upriver, to the left is downriver. So it's not like we don't pump our gas full of alcohol, change the names of the streets. You're walking down Royal Street, past over Canal, you're on St. Charles Avenue, north, south, east, west is all out of whack. So if you're walking around New Orleans, you're not sure you're walking in the right direction, don't worry about it, nobody knows which direction they're walking. Straight ahead is the Ernest Morial Convention Center. The Ernest Morial Convention Center is named after Ernest Morial. He was the first African-American mayor of the city of New Orleans. The convention center is the 5th largest convention center in the United States. It is almost a mile long. There's 1 million square feet of convention space in the convention center. They do all sorts of events in the convention center. Drew Brees has his national pickleball contest. 3 weeks ago, we had a Comic-Con science fiction. Captain Kirk was here, 90-something years old, signing an autograph. Now, this is the highest part of the city. We are 6 feet above sea level. On the side of the convention center, where you guys are going to be on Monday, is the cruise ship terminal. On the other side is the convention center. Now, look to the right. Look inside the convention center. See those 4 big pillars? Those pillars are holding up the Crescent City Connection Bridge. The bridge was built before the convention center. That stop will be stop 16. Does anybody want to get off the bus to stop 16? Now, next block up on the left, that paved park right there, that is the Katrina Memorial Park. That park is dedicated to the thousands of people who lost their lives during Hurricane Katrina. In the park is a sculpture of a house and a tree. All the materials from the sculpture were found on the ground from damage during Hurricane Katrina. Now, right past the Katrina Memorial Park, we have the sugar mill. Now, the sugar mill, that used to be a sugar warehouse. Louisiana is the 2nd largest producer of cane sugar in the United States. Between New Orleans and Baton Rouge is sugar country. In the 1850s, there were over 600 sugar plantations between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. If you go into the French Quarter, go into Cafe du Monde, go up in the river, go downriver, the first big factory, see, Domino's, they produce about 7 million pounds of sugar a day. I'm sorry, a year, 60,000 pounds a day. Next stop coming up will be stop 17. Stop number 17 is for our warehouse district, our arts district, for the Riverwalk Outlet Mall. Does anybody want to get off at 17? I have nobody coming down to stop 17. Now to the right, the Riverwalk Outlet Mall. Now this wall is right on the Mississippi River. Now here, the Mississippi River is 175 feet deep. Up top is a food court. Now my wife loves it when I go shopping with her. I hate to go shopping, but I'll always come shopping here with her. There's a food court up there. So my wife will go shopping, I'll go to the food court, get a cup of coffee. An average of 100 seafaring ships will sail by here on a daily basis. So when my wife goes shopping, I'm sitting there with a cup of coffee. She's happy, I'm going shopping with her. I'm happy, I'm not in the store saying, baby, that looks great, let's get out of here. Also on our right, View Lodge Restaurant. This is a really good Cajun restaurant. This is stop 17, and nobody come down to 17. Tonight, they're having an art festival. Right here, White Linen Night on Julia Street. There'll be a lot of restaurants having food, bands playing. By Canadian artist, Miss Diane Brasso. Oh, this is going to be tight. You see if I can help Brian get through here. You don't need no help. Down the street here is the old warehouse district. 1982. There's kind of an end to our right, there's an old casket factory. Now a block to the right is Fulton Street. Now Fulton Street is a pedestrian plaza. There's a lot of restaurants and bars on Fulton Street. One of the bars on Fulton Street is Manning Sports Bar. Now Manning Sports Bar is partially owned by Archie, Eli, Peyton, Cooper Manning, 3 NFL quarterbacks, 4 Super Bowls. Manning Sports Bar is just full of Manning sports memorabilia. You'll not see a picture of Tom Brady, Drew Brees, or Joe Montana, just the Mannings. Also on Fulton Street, there's a restaurant called Ruth Chris Steakhouse. And people like, big deal, Steve. We have a Ruth Chris Steakhouse in my hometown. I know they're all over the place, but Ruth Chris Steakhouse started here in New Orleans. In the 1960s, there was a restaurant in Mid-City called Chris Steakhouse. Ruth Patel wanted to buy it. She met with the owners. They agreed to sell it to her with the caveat they keep the name Chris Steakhouse. Miss Ruth thought about it. She said, okay, I'll buy it. She bought the restaurant, put her name Ruth with an apostrophe S, giving a possession, became Ruth Chris Steakhouse. This is now the largest gourmet steakhouse chain in the world. Now, if you guys are looking for a good steak in New Orleans, don't go to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Go to Dickie Brennan Steakhouse. It's in the French Quarter in Iberville between Bourbon and Royal. Go to Mr. John's Steakhouse by stop 15 on St. Charles Avenue. Desi Vegas by stop 9. I'm just saying go to a local steakhouse. You can eat at Ruth Chris anywhere in the world. There's only one Dickie Brennan's in the world. And it's right here in the French Quarter. The same people own Commander's Palace, our cousins own Dickie Brennan Steakhouse. As for the Creole Queen, it's a paddleboat that goes down the Mississippi River, Caesar Casino, Drago's Restaurant, the Audubon Aquarium. Now, the ferry across the Mississippi River. Now, a couple of years ago, they did a major renovation on the aquarium. They built an insectarium in it. I was pretty excited about it. I went to my wife and said, hey, sweetheart, they just built an insectarium in the aquarium. We're going to go check it out. My wife gives me a pistette stare. She's like, Steve, how much money do we spend every month on an exterminator? I don't know, maybe $10 a month. So we spend money every month to kill bugs, and now you want to spend more money to go see bugs. You can guess my wife's response to you to go to the insectarium. Now it is a world-class insectarium. There's a beautiful butterfly room in there. But to my wife's point, in that insectarium, there's a cafe. In that cafe, they serve bugs. You can eat ants, crickets, worms. Now who comes to New Orleans to eat bugs? Well, about a year ago, an 8-year-old boy screamed out, I need, shot his hand up, sat straight in the seat. I walked over to him and I said, well, what did you have? He was pleased with ear to ear. He said, I had a worm cookie. I said, well, how was it? He said it really wasn't very good. It was kind of dry. A Brooks Brothers, Louis Vuitton, Rolex watches. Now, it's not a mistake that an iron mall is right across the street from Caesar's Casino. So, ladies, your husband's in that casino, he gets it really big, right across the street to Tiffany's, pick yourself up for a nice piece of jewelry. Gentlemen, if you're in that casino, you spend more money than you budgeted for, you can't afford a fancy dinner tonight, don't worry about it. There's a Shake Shack. Now we're getting ready to enter into the French Quarter. French Quarter was established in 1718 by a French-Canadian explorer, Bienville. Bienville pitched where St. Louis Cathedral is. One, there was an Indian trading post. Two, it was on a big crescent on the river. Now, when the French Quarter was first built, all the buildings in the French Quarter were built out of cypress. We make this right turn into the French Quarter. We'll see 8 cypress trees on our left. Now in 1788, there was a fire. Burnt down 880 buildings in the French Quarter. 6 years later, there was another fire. It burnt down 200 buildings. After that second fire, the Spanish government came up with a building code. All buildings had to be built up to the sidewalk. You had to have a brick or a stucco facade. You had to have a slate or a tile roof. You had to have a brick or firewall between each building. Each building is required to have an open courtyard. In that courtyard, you're required to do your cooking. They haven't had another major fire in the French Quarter since. 90% of the French Quarter is the Spanish style of architecture. Now look, you see these plates with the bulk on the side of them? There are cables running through these buildings holding them together. All this land is just sediment from that river flooding and receding. If we have a drought, that land will compact. Like put a sponge on the countertop, dries up, it shrinks down, then it'll rain. Now 3 years ago, we were 24 inches, 2 feet below normal rainfall. Then it'll rain, that land will swell up, causing these buildings to go up and down just a little bit. Now look to our left, look at this green hotel. Look at all the plates, but look at all the cracks on the side of the building. You see all the cracks, you can see how these buildings going down. These buildings were built in the 1800s. They're doing their darn best just to hold them together. Coming up on our left, we have a beautiful statue of Bienville. Bienville was established in Orleans in 1718. Standing up behind him is a Catholic priest, and his feet is a Native American Indian. Also coming up on our left, Two Jacks Restaurant. Two Jacks is the second oldest family restaurant in the city of New Orleans. Here, get this shot. These windows here, see how crooked they are?
Oh, yeah.
Look to our left. Look how crooked these windows are. Look how many plates. The building's all waffling. Now our next stop coming up will be stop number one. Stop number one is our first stop in the French Quarter. It's for Jackson Square, St. Louis Cathedral, Café du Monde. For the walking tour, walking tour started at 2 o'clock. The last tour will be at 3 o'clock. And that's included in your one-day ticket. Now I know there's a lot of different tour companies you guys can take. We do appreciate you taking the hop on, hop off bus. If you've enjoyed the tour, we have a gratuity box downstairs. Mr. Karan and I split those gratuities. We also really appreciate reviews. When you get off the bus, I'll hand you a card. Scan the card. If you leave us reviews, we greatly appreciate it. If you didn't like what I had to say, put down Don. That's my boss's name. He's the guy who hired me. There's a restroom. I know some of you guys asked about that a little earlier. There is a restroom at stop one on the right side of the bus, block up. Alright, so guys, you need your restroom. It's right here in this building underneath that red umbrella to the right. There's our French Quarter ticket office. Since 1718. From 1718 to 1803, all residents of Louisiana had to be Catholic. There was no separation of church and state. Pick that spot. There's this location on the river. Right before he built this levee, you could look upriver or downriver a mile each way. Now that is the third church on that spot. The first church got destroyed by a hurricane. The second church was destroyed by a fire. Coming up on the right side of the bus, we have Café du Monde. Now, Café du Monde is the oldest coffee shop in the city. Guys, please remain seated. Café du Monde is famous for their café au lait and their beignets. Now, café au lait is 50% warm milk, 50% coffee with chicory. Now, the chicory was added to the coffee during the Civil War times. Chicory is the lettuce endive. It's the root of that lettuce. Someone figured out if you take that root, roast it up, grind it up, add it to your coffee beans, you would stretch your coffee. You get a second or third pouring out of those coffees. Right behind Café du Monde, we got Aunt Sally's. Aunt Sally's is really good pralines. Making pralines here since 1935. We have a coupon for Aunt Sally's. It gives you 15% off your in-store purchases. Straight ahead, we got a beautiful statue of Joan of Arc. Joan is the Maid of Orleans. Joan was a gift to Nouvelle Orleans by the French in the 1900s. Now, Central Grocery is an Italian grocery store. They opened up 1906. At the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, 80% of the French Quarter were Italian immigrants. Men worked on the docks. And Central Grocery came up with a sandwich for those dock workers that would last all day. Muffalata is a really good sandwich. A quarter of a muffalata is plenty of food for one person. They cut them in quarters, served by the half for the whole. Next stop coming up will be stop number 2. Stop number 2 is for the French Market. Anybody getting along? Mississippi Valley, the old Ursuline Convent. The Ursuline nuns moved to Louisiana in 1727. They came first there for food vendors. Right up front is a really good place. Loretta's, excellent pralines and very good beignets. Next after marketplace is merchandise. You can find hats and t-shirts, umbrellas, a lot of mass-produced stuff there in the marketplace. You're looking for really good, unique work of fine art, you want to go to Royal Street. Royal Street is a great street for shopping, for antiques, art galleries, jewelry stores. Big red brick building is the New Orleans Jazz Museum. Now, jazz was invented here in New Orleans. Now, before that building was the Jazz Museum, it was a mint. It's the only mint to mint U.S. coins, Confederate coins, and also minted coins to Mexico. Now, this weekend, they're having the Saxophone Festival, celebrating Louis Armstrong's birthday. It's a free festival. No charge to get in, i.e. free. Coming up to the street here is Esplanade Avenue. From Esplanade Avenue to Canal Street and the Mississippi River to Rampart Street is the French Quarter. Now on the left side of the bus, on the right side of the bus is the Bywater neighborhood. On the left side of the bus is the Marigny neighborhood. Now the Marigny neighborhood is home to Frenchman Street. Now Frenchman Street's a music mecca. The first 4 blocks, there's probably 20 nightclubs. Music is a great store, Louisiana Music Exchange. Most of the nightclubs on Frenchman Street charge you 1 drink per set. So if you want to listen to music tonight, definitely hit the Frenchman Street area. Next stop is Stop. Anybody get a stop? We have the Marigny neighborhood. Marigny neighborhood is home to Frenchman Street. Marigny neighborhood started off as life as a plantation owned by the Marigny family. In 1805, Bernard Marigny is 15 years old. He inherits his father's plantation. The plantation is worth millions. Now, what do you think happens when a 15-year-old boy inherits millions of dollars? He squanders that money, becomes a womanizer, a drinker, a gambler. In a couple of years, he's out of cash. He has to figure out how he's going to survive. He doesn't want to work. What he does is start selling small parcels of land, block by block. He basically becomes the first real estate developer in Louisiana, giving us this beautiful neighborhood. His older sister pretty much followed the same model. She married into a plantation family. Unfortunately, that marriage ended up in a divorce. She sold her piece. She had an uptown plantation, sold that piece of property to a real estate developer, and he developed the Garden District. So both the Marigny and the Garden District, 2 iconic neighborhoods, came out of the same family, a brother or sister. These 2 small kids gave us these 2 great neighborhoods. We're the only region in the United States that has its own styles of food. We actually have 2. We have Cajun and we have Creole. Now another food that's very popular in New Orleans is either Cajun or Creole, and that is a po' boy. Now a po' boy is really no different than a hero, a sub, a grinder, a sandwich, depending on where you live in America. But the name po' boy is unique. The name po' boy originated in 1929. In 1929, there was a streetcar strike. The strike lasted for months. There was a grocery store owned by the Martin Brothers. The Martin Brothers used to work on the streetcar. They offered these striking streetcar workers a free sandwich. You gotta remember, 1929, there's no unemployment, no food stamps, you're not working, you're not eating. So they offered them a sandwich of French bread, French fries, and gravy. Now, you're out of food, you're hungry, you can survive on it. But these guys were proud. They didn't want to walk into a grocery store, wait online, ask the cashier for a free sandwich. Instead, they had to go back to the grocery store, go to the receiving area. Well, one day, the receiver sees this guy come over and yells into the kitchen, "Hey, here comes another one of them po' boys." Now, my brother's grocery store is right here to our left, Billy, fast taxi, Now, I recommend 3 places that I really like. The first place is the Nola Po' Boy, N-O-L-A Po' Boy on the 900 block of Bourbon Street. The second one is Killer Po' Boy on the 200 block of Delphine. The third one is Joey K's at Magazine Street. Let's stop at 13. light, but the next light coming up to Treme. Treme is the oldest African American neighborhood in the United States. From 1718 to 1803, under the French and the Spanish, they had something called a Code Noir, or a black code. This Code Noir gave the enslaved certain rights, their owners certain responsibilities. One of the rights under the Code Noir, the enslaved could buy their freedom. By the time of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, between 25 and 30% of the slave money were free people of color. They'd buy property across the street from the light on the right side of the bus in the Claude Treme neighborhood. We're the only region in the United States that has its own styles of food. We actually have two. We have Cajun and we have Creole. Now another food that's very popular in New Orleans is either Cajun or Creole, and that is a po' boy. Now a po' boy is really no different than a hero, a sub, a grinder, a sandwich, depending on where you live in America. But the name po' boy is unique. The name po' boy originated in 1929. In 1929, there was a streetcar strike. The strike lasted for months. There was a grocery store owned by the Martin Brothers. The Martin Brothers used to work on the streetcar. They offered these striking streetcar workers a free sandwich. You gotta remember, 1929, there's unemployment, no food stamps, you're not working, you're not eating. So they offered them a sandwich of French bread, French fries, and gravy. Now, you're out of food, you're hungry, you can survive on it. But these guys were proud. They didn't want to walk into a grocery store, wait online, ask the cashier for a free sandwich. Instead, they had to go back to the grocery store, by the receiving area. Well, one day, the receiver sees this guy come over and yells into the kitchen, hey, here comes another one of them po' boys. Now, Martin Brothers grocery store is right here in Carolina, Billy, Mass Tattoo, backside. Now, I'll recommend three places that I really like. The first place is Nola Po' Boy, N-O-L-A Po' Boy on the 900 block of Bourbon Street. The second one is Healer Po' Boy on the 200 block of Delphine. The third one is Joey K's, the magazine street in Woodstock, 13. Beautiful girl, Louis Armstrong, coming up here on our right. Born here. Not this light, but the next light coming up to Treme. Treme is the oldest African American neighborhood in the United States. From 1718 to 1803, under the French and the Spanish, they had something called a Code Noir, or a black code. This Code Noir gave the enslaved certain rights, their owners certain responsibilities. One of the rights under the Code Noir, the enslaved could buy their freedom. By the time of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, between 25 and 30% of the slave money were free people of color. They'd buy property across the street from the light on the right side of the bus in the Claude Treme neighborhood. Iconic neighborhoods. On the left side of the bus is the Marigny neighborhood. Across the street on the left side of the bus is the French Quarter, and across the street on the right side of the bus is Treme. Now, Rampart Street is the dividing line between above and below sea level. From Rampart Street to the left is above sea level. From Rampart Street to the right is below sea level. Going up on the right side of the bus, there's white buildings, the Jazz and Heritage Center. These are the people that put on jazz festival. Great 2 week long. Next stop, Philadelphia, will be stopped number 4. Stop 4 is for the Treme neighborhood and for the French Quarter. Anybody get over to stop 4? Keys right here, Philadelphia. So the convenience store had a really good food, really good fried chicken there, and good po' boys. Nobody coming down for 4, Mr. Pond. Galleries. Now, since we're here, look at this balcony to our right. See these spikes coming down? These people are nice. See on the pole, see the spikes coming down?
No, right here?
Right here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, spikes going out. Okay.
Now, when you go in the French Quarter, you see those spikes going down, you also see them going up. They're called Romeo spikes. They were put up there to stop young men from climbing up the balcony to meet with the young women. Now, you go up as Romeo, and you come down as Juliet. Again, these people are nice. They're only going down. You're in the French Quarter walking around, you see a lot of this, they go up and down. The first opera in America was held here in New Orleans on Bourbon Street with Sheridan Four Crosses. Then we go from the right, we got Armstrong Park, named after Louis Armstrong. Next block on the left, the second yellow building with the green cast iron, that's the old J&M recording studio. Little Richard recorded Tutti Frutti, where Fats Domino recorded the first rock and roll album. She has a Harris Center just going to turn into a music museum. Back on the right side of the bus, passing that iconic archway into Armstrong Park, with this paved park here is Congo Square. Under the Code Noir, it was against the law to work here in Slade on Sundays and holidays. Sunday was a day of rest. The enslaved could go wherever they wanted to. They would come to this part of the park. They played music, they would dance, keep up with family. The Code Noir ended in 1803 when we became an American territory. Next stop coming up is stop number 5. Stop number 5 is for the Basin Street Visitor Center. We have the cleanest public restrooms in the Basin Street Visitor Center. There's a coffee shop in there, there's a gift shop. It's also the only place you can buy a ticket to get into St. Louis #1 Cemetery. There's only 3 ways to get into that cemetery. The first way, your family owns a plot, you die, you're interned there forever. That's not the best way to do it. The second way, your family owns a plot, you get a permit from the Archdiocese, they give you a pass to visit relatives, or you buy a ticket in the Bay Street Visitor Center. They give you a 50-minute walking tour, you get to leave and you're not missing any programs. Now, as we're pulling out of over Basin Street, look to the left. Down the street, you can see a church steeple. That church steeple is Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. It was originally built in 1826 as a mortuary chapel. New Orleans dealt with yellow fever for 65 years. They had no idea what was causing it. It was caused by a mosquito. The worst year, 1855, between 9 and 11,000 people died of yellow fever that one summer. See what's going on. Out the back door into St. Louis #1 Cemetery. This is the oldest cemetery in the city. The cemetery was built in 1789. This is still an active cemetery. If your family maintained a vault here, you can intern up to 2 members of your family per year in the cemetery. Look in the back of the cemetery. See those really tall ones? Those are called society tombs. So if you couldn't afford to buy a plot of land in a cemetery, you could join a benevolent society, pay a monthly fee, and you got to be buried in holy ground. Again, this cemetery is still an active cemetery. This is a really good system. You can intern up to 2 members of your family per year. It's built above ground, has nothing to do with the fact that New Orleans is below sea level. This is just how the Spanish bury.